YouTube, what's going on? Today we are going to be watching Mike Isratel. I'm going to be telling you my honest reaction. I'm going to go ahead and like it already, and I'm going to subscribe. I really have not watched this guy very much. I know that he is science-based. I know he's got a background, RP. You probably heard of this before. I've heard of it before. But today I'm going to be reacting to what he says about is feeling the burn in your muscles critical for growth. And pretty much, I'm just going to give my honest opinion on what he says, what he says about lifting. You know what I'm saying? So let's get it.
Lactate and other metabolites that are associated with the burn from higher reps or getting really close to failure or taking very short rest breaks. Is there a mechanism by which they cause some amount of muscle growth? Because you get two looks. Some people are like, yep, it's metabolites, it's cell swelling, it's also muscle tension, mostly tension. You get another look from people that's like, it's just tension and they just don't want to have any more of it. Cell swelling aside, I'm quite swollen sitting here just embracing this manhood in front of me. What?
Wow.
Huh?
What was
said?
What was that? That was crazier than Greg Doucette. What was that Greg and Doucette comment? What the heck?
You can't say that kind of thing to female guests, mostly because you're misgendering them. But what do you think about metabolites and muscle growth?
All right, this is what we actually care about.
Yeah, so I have to give credit to Dr. Daniel Lawson. We published a review article on this, and really thorough. Like, there's a lot of pretty much every study we could find that speaks to this, and the resistance training studies in humans that have actually measured lactate. We think we found them, the ones that had like an outcome variable of interest. So there's a lot in there. But I mean, according to our review of the literature, there's enough evidence for me to kind of like you said with the sauna. Like, I don't know for sure, but there's enough here that's intriguing. Mm-hmm. Like when you take simple experiment overall, now the actual protein analysis and that is sophisticated, but there's cells in a dish, cell culture, myoblasts.
Okay, muscle
cells.
Cells, yeah.
Cells that can, eventually become a muscle fiber.
Sure.
So, okay, we have this solution that has things in there to keep the cells from dying, we'll say, right? And so then we add lactate at a concentration that would mimic what our blood lactate might be
during hard exercise.
So some of the highest lactates that we have measured from resistance training in the blood, the amount in the muscle is going to be much higher, right? But in the blood is probably 10 to 20 millimoles. Okay. So if we use that concentration and we put that lactate in this petri dish and we incubate the cells for a period of hours or days. And there's a petri dish that doesn't have any lactate present. There's at least like 4 studies. And really the other ones, little different designs. And, they fed mice lactate. They injected lactate.
I've seen the injection study. I didn't know they fed them lactate. What the fuck does lactate taste like? Acidic.
I don't know. I'm curious. But I mean, in those studies, man, incubated, and then they've done like pulsatile exposures to kind of mimic what it would be like from like in a week's time. Because like one day for a mouse is like a month for a human.
Yes.
Right. And so if we have these intermittent periods of exposure to lactate, the thought was kind of mimicking what you would get if you're training periodically, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So both of those examples, like incubation over hours or days or pulsatile, you see, generally speaking, larger growth responses, more upregulation of...
All right, so I'm going to straight up say, I would agree. I think you go harder, you build up more lactate, you're going to see gains. And my answer to it isn't even like so much science-based, because whenever I listen to somebody science-based, I have to be honest. 2,000 years ago, I mean, take it back to Egyptian time, right? everybody thought that they knew everything, right? I mean, like, the smartest people would laugh at the dumbest people the same exact way that the smartest people today would laugh at the dumbest people. But if we take the smartest people from the Egyptian time and we put them in the time today, any of us, the dumbest of us, would laugh at the smartest of them, right? And so the reason that I'm saying this is because a lot of these like science studies, like we think that we know something until 20 years later we realize no, we actually didn't understand any of it, right? And so that's why I always come to like these science-based talks with really like a not a closed mind, but like a mind with a couple layers. You're gonna have to break my layers. It's not just gonna have to be your research, you know what I mean?
Molecules involved.
But I will say, I think you put your body through pain. I think you're gonna grow. Serious.
In really the mTOR pathway. So that's the mammalian target of rapamycin. It's kind of this anabolic complex of proteins that it's involved with initiating the translation of RNA into proteins, protein synthesis. We want more of those proteins to grow the cell, right?
From what I understand, mTOR is one of the critical core pathways of muscle growth in animals and humans. And so, like, that's really decent fucking basic evidence, huh?
Right? No, handful. It's a handful.
Handful's nice, though.
It is nice.
Especially with well-controlled animal models. Like, that starts to build an interesting picture.
Well, of the like 10, right, half of them in vitro, so culture, and then the other involved in actual, rodent. And those are a little more mixed, but they were kind of odd, the study designs, and like translating it to humans.
Sure.
And there's just not, I don't know. Well, take it from here. Like, what do we want to get into with us for practical application? Because
are there any human studies trying to tease apart the mechanisms of muscle growth that you find compelling enough to be like, yeah, there's something here for metabolites? I know that there are many metabolites, and lactate is not the only one, and some of them have been kind of correlated to muscle growth before. But the metabolite hypothesis in general, let me put it another way. Are you aware of any research that completely refutes the metabolite hypothesis?
I wouldn't say it completely refutes it. And that's a really, I think, good frame for this, right? Where it's like, there's a difference between a study showing that something results in a worse outcome versus no difference.
Sure.
And okay, if we take 10 studies and half of them show no difference between, let's say, treatment A or B, in this case, lactate or no lactate, and the other half show a positive effect. Half of them show a positive effect. The other half show no harm. It's no worse.
And this is also another reason, right? So he's saying like it shows no harm. It's no worse. This is another reason why I can't always trust science stuff. You know what I mean? Because so 10 say nothing happened. 5 say that it did happen. So what's the conclusion going to be? Is it going to be, oh yeah, odds are you're going to do a little bit, or are they going to round to the higher number, the 10 that didn't do anything, or they say like, well, it doesn't really do anything because the majority of this people that we tested on didn't. You see what I'm saying? Type of things like that. And so that's why I'm always like cautious when listening to science-based. But honestly, everything that's said so far, I could probably agree with.
So with a small body of literature, generally speaking, I gravitate to that.
Sure.
Right? It's like, well, and that's kind of how I see the lactate story right now.
Yeah.
And if you want to zoom in just a little bit, and we can come back out of the matrix. One of the things that really, and Dan found this pathway that I didn't know existed before we did the review, that was really interesting, that I think, as of today, seems to explain this, at least if there is a lactate-mediated anabolic signaling process. This one, right as of now, seems to make the most sense to me. So we produce lactate as a consequence of the glycolytic pathway. Think back to one of our previous topics with high volume training, we see more glycolytic enzymes.
Yes.
Well, with more glycolytic enzymes, more breakdown of stored glycogen and glucose coming into the cell to get energy. We make more of those in response to training. Well, we also form more lactate.
Sure.
Yeah. If we're engaging that pathway, right? And so, okay, lactate seems to behave in, the lactate shuttle.
Yep.
Right, cell to cell lactate shuttle. So lactate can be transported out and go to an adjacent fiber, and that fiber can take it up and actually use it for energy. It can convert to pyruvate and go through the citric acid cycle. Cool. Lactate also seems to bind to this receptor. It's a G protein coupled receptor, which is the most common receptor on our cells,
common,
right? There's all sorts of them. This one's called GPR81, and lactate seems to bind to it and instigate a signaling pathway that eventually seems to increase the activity of the mTOR complex.
Yeah. Pathway or candidate pathway that's been demonstrated as, just call it powerful evidence, but I would call it a real eye opener. Like,
Right?
because people have been saying observationally for years that, the burn makes a difference. Getting closer to failure, higher density of training, that maybe there's something there. And now that we're finding that when you present lactate to both animals and cell cultures, it causes a growth response.
Right.
And in addition, we have at least a little bit of evidence that there is a candidate pathway that links the presentation of lactate to the activation of the core muscle growth protein complex in humans and animals. To me, that doesn't quite say metabolites for sure grow muscle, but it shows me that if you're saying it's only tension and don't worry about the burn, you're probably not doing something you would be real confident putting money on. It's probably good to be like, I think metabolites might matter, and we might find even more reasons why they matter later. Would you think that's decent?
Yeah, it kind of gets at causality, right? Like necessary, sufficient, or contributory.
Sure.
And I can see it being contributory.
Sufficient is nonsense. There's no such thing as sufficient muscle growth. Until I have muscle tumors on my face, I'm not stopping. You've put in the work over the years, and you've made good gains. But now you're ready to create your most impressive. Necessary is, I would say, kind of a red herring because no one's ever claimed that necessary to get a burn. Everyone knows even sets of one repeated with enough frequency are going to cause robust hypertrophy. The tension hypothesis is not up for debate here. It's not metabolites versus tension, and it never was. But it's like, if you can get some tension presented, you will with resistance training. But if you can do some higher rep sets and push it close to failure, is there another mechanism called the metabolite mechanism that starts to contribute a little bit more to growth? And is that worth just knowing that it exists offers you some options? So for example, if you're like, man, like heavy fucking weight's the way to go because tension is all that matters, you're going to get some kind of injury and not be able to go heavy. And you're going to be like, well, fuck it, I'm just taking time off. But if you know the metabolite hypothesis is real and it actually works, and then it's the metabolite model instead of hypothesis, then all of a sudden occlusion training, which sequesters metabolites, lets you produce a lot without a lot of force, becomes like a real tenable option. And we already know occlusion training works really well in the short term. But maybe if we can pin a mechanism to it, we can start to understand like, wow, the burn really does matter. I'll put to you the way it matters to me most. I'll tell you this, man.
All right, so real quick before he gets too deep, I do want to say I do agree. If all you do is train hard and all you're about is attention on like one rep or like just super heavy weight, like 2-3 reps, at some point you probably will get hurt. Honestly, just doing 2-3 reps, the weight's just too heavy for your body to handle. I've seen it happen so much. It's almost happened to me. So I would say he's right about that. Now the inclusion, I want to hear about this.
Fucking huge science nerd, and so are you. This is what we do. If I feel the fucking gnarly burn on something like squats or leg presses, hack squats, some shit you just don't want to do anymore, but I know there's convincing mechanistic linking of the thing that burns you, various byproducts, including lactate and its sort of acidic counterpart,
hydrogen ions,
etc.
Yeah.
If there is convincing data that the stuff you're making that makes your muscles burn also grows you, it changes the psychology of those last few reps. Because now pain means growth, and now I want more. Instead of being like, oh, I've already beat my reps from last week, better turn it in. I kind of get, real lizard-eyed and go, oh, boy.
And that's
so
fun.
Honestly, I'd say without the science data, I'm thinking like that no matter what. Because if you want to use science or not on this, I'm just going to say when you're in like, if you're doing like hack squat and you want to crank out like 3 more reps or you want to be done, but instead you crank out 3 more reps, I'm telling you, maybe your muscles don't grow, right? Maybe the science shows muscle doesn't grow from the extra 3 reps. which I don't think that's the case. I think that he's going to talk a little bit more about. But I'm saying your mental, you grow your mind, and when you grow your mind, I think that's the most important part of lifting. Because when you have a healthy mind, you can do anything. You do anything, seriously. So I think with or without the scientific data, I'm putting in the extra 3 reps. That's just the way I look at it.
It is. It is. Well, so if there, you knew for a fact that the burn had nothing to do with growth, I don't know.
Fair.
I'll just do another set of high tension after this. Who cares? But if you know that the burn causes...
This is kind of where I would disagree with him, because even if the burn didn't give me growth, it did not give me growth in my muscles, I would probably still do it just because I know that it builds my head. The reason that I have done so many crazy squats over the years is for nothing other than my mental health. For like the fact that I think like I could get under 500 pounds and squat for 15 reps. Like, I know I could do this. I don't care if it grows anything. I know that I could do this. And so that's the reason that I would always do the extra reps, no matter if it's beneficial or not.
Growth. Man, it's a thing. It's like, if you know that the work you're doing is every hour you stay longer at work, you're getting paid overtime. It changes the dynamic of your coworkers. Like, hey man, you want to pack it in? You're like, I'm going to stay 2 more hours, bro. Like, you're a security guard or something. They paying you real good for those 2 hours. If you were just getting paid the same, or if you were working for free at that point, yeah, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Let's go get a couple drinks. It changes the game if there's the upside.
And I feel like what he's not including, though, in this part is he's like, all right, so they're a security guard. If you're going to get paid the same, well, you're probably not going to do it, right? But, like, honestly, if you want to get a little bit ahead, if you're in that situation where you're trying to get a little bit ahead and you're going to get paid the same, that little extra money may help. You see what I'm saying? And even if you're going to get paid nothing... Now, if you can't move up the ranks in a job, right, then there's no point. But if you're doing those extra hours for free, maybe you're trying to build a connection, right? And what I'm talking about is like building a connection with like your boss, whatever, so you can get promoted. But I would look at that the same way as me doing the extra 3 reps, no matter if they help me or not, because I know that I'm doing them for my mental health. I know that I'm doing them so I can prove to myself more. I'm not all in it for the growth. I'm in it for the mental growth too.
And the knowledge of the mechanism. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. No, I mean, that's like inspired a lot of my research. It's just like, I want to understand this to help apply it.
Yes.
And help others apply it so they don't waste their time.
Yes.
Right?
So imagine training a client. Let's say in a few years, let's pretend magically that we've confirmed pretty much like, yeah, okay, lactate and a bunch of other ions absolutely contribute to muscle growth. Imagine how that changes the dynamics of the personal training sphere. When, you know, Betty's doing split squats, she's like, I can't do it anymore. Like, Betty, the pain you feel is literally the ions that make you grow. More reps, Betty. It's probably not nice to yell at women named Betty.
I don't know. She might like it. I don't know. I don't know. Is this a theoretical character, Betty, that is training, you know? And
she's there for
herself, right?
Yeah.
She's got to test it out. Maybe it would be motivating, and she would do some more reps and then keep coming back and get bigger and stronger. And
she racks the weight. She's like, don't ever mention science to me again. You're like, oh, Jesus, Betty. Like, sorry. Yes.
But time will tell.
Time will tell.
Yeah, but we need to do
I think they're just into the... they're just into the app. They're done. Honestly, my response on that, I will do the extra reps for growth or not. Period. In life, I will do the extra stuff for growth or not. Period. Because I know that there's more than just what you're doing. If you can build your mental health, if you do those 3 more reps and you get no growth out of it, you literally get nothing in return for doing 3 more reps. But I know for a fact in my head, I'm going to feel a little bit better about myself. I'm going to know that I can do it. I'm going to do it. You see what I'm saying? So guys, let me know what you thought about that. Let me know what you think about my perspective on the whole thing. And go ahead, like, and subscribe. Blakewendt signing out. Peace.